We've covered a lot of formulas, concepts, and interpretations. Some of this can be very difficult to pull together unless you have an opportunity to walk through an actual example. And I'd like to do that with you now to try and help you pull all of these formulas and concepts together. I've created this example to help you understand how to pull all of the concepts, formulas, interpretations of planned value, earned value, actual cost into a logic problem. I'll walk you through the concept and we'll apply all of the formulas, and then we're going to interpret the answers. This is also going to help you determine which one of these techniques is taking a snapshot of work performance in a certain period of time, and which one of these formulas is forecasting what we expect to see. So let's begin. Here's the background. You're a job manager for a power company, and your crew is replacing 5 miles of power lines and posts in Kansas along the I-70 interstate. The 3 teams you manage are responsible for drilling holes, setting new posts, securing new power lines, switching the power, and removing the old lines and posts. The posts are all the same length, and each post must be set 5 feet in the ground. The post must be set back 35 yards from the highway. Posts must be 50 yards apart. The grade of the power line is the same for the entire 5 miles. The planned schedule, and remember this is the work scheduled to be done, includes the following: surveying and marking the line to drill the post holes, drilling each hole 5 foot deep, setting the posts, securing the power lines, switching the power to the new line, then removing the old posts and the posts from the half-mile mark of the power poles and lines worked each day. The estimated value of the work scheduled to be done is $5,000 per mile. Each half-mile section must be completed before the next half-mile section is started. These are very important concepts, so let me repeat that again. The estimated value of the work scheduled to be done is $5,000 per mile, but each half-mile section must be completed before the next half-mile section is started. The job is to replace 5 miles of power poles and lines. Today is the end of day 5. Now that I've described the scenario, the following daily summaries can be used to help you determine your building blocks. And remember, your building blocks are planned value, earned value, actual cost, and your project budget at completion. Another key data point, remember, this is the end of day 5. So let's take a look and see what happened on day 1. The team started and completed the first section, which is a half-mile of the job. The actual cost incurred during day 1 is $2,000. So make a note of that. Here's the summary of what occurred on day 2. The teams started and completed the second section of the job. The actual cost incurred during day 2 is $2,600. On day 3, the teams started and completed the third section of the job. The actual cost incurred during day 3 was $2,750. On day 4, the team started and completed the fourth section of the job. The actual cost incurred on day 4 was $2,400. The final summary on day 5, the team started but only completed 90% of the 5th section of the job. And the actual cost incurred during day 5 was $2,700. The summary of these 5 days has given you some very important information, along with some additional information that was provided in the project description. From these summaries, you can now determine how much money you actually spent. You can also determine your plan value, earn value, budget at completion. I'll help you walk through each one of these calculations. But the other thing I want you to focus on is ensuring that you are able to interpret the answer that we get from each one of our formulas. And as a project manager, you start to proactively think about what is occurring in this project. Should you be concerned? And should you start involving your team members in coming up with analysis to present to your sponsors, your stakeholders, and your customer? Now, another thing to remember, plan value and earn value are not formulas. They come from the information that you've been able to determine from the exercise. So let's think back to what those were. Let's begin by determining the 4 building blocks: plan value, earn value, actual cost, and budget at completion. From the word problem, we know that the plan value is as followed. The plan schedule is your teams must survey and mark the line to drill the post holes, drill each hole 5 feet deep, set the posts, secure the power lines, switch the power to the new line, then remove the old lines and posts from the half mile of the power poles and lines they worked for that day. So, the planned value, again, is the estimated value of the work planned to be done. And that is $5,000 per mile. What we know is that we can only complete a half a mile of work per day. The information that's been provided is the estimated value of the work scheduled to be done is $5,000 per mile. The first thing then that we must do is divide the 5,000 by 2, because we're only completing a half a mile per day. Next, we need to determine the earned value. In each daily summary, you know that the first 4 days the teams started and completed the job. Each job went for a half mile. Earned value is the estimated value of the work actually completed. And on the 5th day, we know that the team started but only completed 90% of the 5th section. So the formula that we have to apply here is we have a daily value of $2,500. We were able to meet that for the first 4 days, but on the 5th day, we only completed 90% of the work. So the value of the work, which was $2,500, was not met. We could only meet 90% of that, and 90% of $2,500 is $2,250. Our estimated value of work actually completed, therefore, is $12,250 at the end of day 5. Next, we need to determine actual cost. That was provided to you in the daily summary. We knew on day 1 that we actually incurred an actual cost of $2,000. On day 2, we had an outlay of $2,600. On day 3, we incurred a cost of $2,750. And on day 4, we incurred a cost of $2,400. And on day 5, we incurred a cost of $2,700. Actual cost is the cost of the work completed. If we add up all of those costs that I just reviewed, the total is $12,450. Therefore, at the end of day 5, we have actually spent that much money. Our budget at completion is the budget for the entire project. The information we received is the estimated value of the work scheduled to be done is $5,000 per mile. We also know that we're replacing 5 miles of power lines and posts in Kansas along the I-70 interstate. To determine what our budget is for the entire project, we're going to take the estimated value of the work scheduled to be done per mile times a total of 5 miles. So our project budget is $25,000. Now that we've completed the 4 building blocks, we can begin working on specific information about how our project is performing, either against the schedule or the budget or both. We can also take that information and begin forecasting to determine how our project is going to continue to perform, and we can also make a decision about whether we need to take any corrective action. Now that we know our planned value, which is the estimated value of the work scheduled to be done, our earned value, which is the estimated value of the work actually completed, our actual costs, which are costs that have been outlaid so far on the project, and our budget, we can begin by assessing how we've done against the budget. The first thing we're going to look at is our cost variance. And the formula for cost variance, again, is our earned value subtracting our actual cost. We've learned that our earned value is $12,250. And again, this is the estimated value of the work actually performed. We also know that we're about 10% behind because we've only finished about 90% of the work that was required on day 5. And that we had a summary of our costs provided to us every day. We added all of those costs to come up with a total of $12,450. So when we execute this formula, the result is going to be a negative number, which means that we are currently over budget. We can say that we are $200 over budget by the end of day 5 when we interpret this answer. If we are going to begin to raise a red flag, we'll need more information to provide to our sponsor and our customer. So it'll help us to determine actually how far behind the budget we are. So let's look at cost performance index. The formula there is earned value divided by actual cost. So when we take the two numbers, and again that is $12,250 divided by $12,450, we come up with 0.98. So now we can actually come to our sponsors and stakeholders and not only say we are $200 behind budget, but we can say that as we are progressing, we have determined that for every dollar that we are spending, we are only getting 98 cents in value. Our next step now is to determine how we are functioning against schedule. So we are going to look at schedule variance. And we know that the formula for schedule variance is our earned value minus our planned value. Our earned value remains at $12,250. Our planned value, which again is the estimated value of the work scheduled to be done, is $12,500. If we subtract earned value from planned value, we come up with a negative 250. We're going to interpret this by saying our project is behind schedule. Again, we're going to be raising a red flag. We need to make sure that we have all of the information at this point to present to the stakeholders, the sponsor, and the customer. So we need to know exactly how far behind schedule we are currently performing at. That formula is earned value divided by planned value. So again, we will take our $12,250, divide that by $12,500, and we are going to find out that we are now performing at 98% of the targeted schedule that we had planned. We now have significant information to go back to the sponsor, the stakeholder, and the customer to tell them the following. We have determined that we are performing over budget. Specifically, for every dollar that we've spent, we're only getting 98 cents in value. In addition to that, we are performing at less than the targeted schedule rate. Specifically, we are 98% of the targeted schedule rate. Now we need to start talking about how we estimate the rest of the project is going to perform. A good place to start is our estimate at completion. The formula for estimate at completion is taking our budget at completion divided by our cost performance index. So we are going to take $25,000 divided by our cost performance index, which is 0.98, and the result is going to be $25,510, meaning that we're saying we estimate that the entire cost of the project at completion will be $25,510. Keep in mind, our original budget at completion was $25,000. So we are currently projecting that we will be $510 over budget. Since today is the end of day 5, it will probably help determine how much cost we expect to incur from this day going forward. So let's determine what our estimate to completion will be. And we know that the formula for that is our estimate at completion minus our actual costs. So that would be $25,510 minus $12,450, resulting in $13,060, meaning that from this day to the end of the project, we expect to spend another $13,060. Now we need to determine how much over budget we're going to be. So we need to understand what our variance at completion is going to be compared to our budget. To determine that, we will want to apply our formula and take our budget, which is $25,000, and our estimate at completion, which is $25,510. If we continue at this rate and apply the formula, we know that, as I mentioned before, we will be spending $510 over our budget. So now we have some very valuable information to share with our sponsors and our stakeholders. The last piece of information that will be very helpful for you as a project manager is to have the assurance that what you have calculated is correct before you actually go and present all of this to your stakeholders, your sponsor, and your customer. So now we will apply the to complete performance index formula, which is the sum of your budget at completion minus your earned value divided by the sum of your budget at completion minus your actual cost, which would be $12,750 divided by $12,550, or 1.02. Since this goes over 1, we are assured that all the other calculations and the forecasts that we have made are correct. We expect to be late, and we expect to be over budget. In this lecture, we've covered a lot of concepts regarding earned value. I've walked through an example of how to apply all of the earned value tools to a real-life scenario. However, I think, given the complexity of all the things that we've learned in this lecture, it's good for you to try another example. I have put an earned value exercise in the website for you to work on this week. I encourage you to do this, even though this activity will not be graded. It'll give you an opportunity to walk through all the concepts that we've talked about. It'll give you another scenario to analyze as a project manager once you've come up with all of the results of your calculations, and you can determine what steps you would take to resolve the issues that are coming up in the scenario that you will solve. I'll also cover this in the next lecture so you can see the results. So again, I encourage you to do this additional exercise, even though it won't be graded. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. You can send me an email and I'll be glad to answer any of the questions that you have. Summarizing our session today, we've covered earned value techniques. Now you know that this is a method that combines scope, schedule, and resource measurements to assess project performance and progress. As I've mentioned several times, I think it's very important for you to not only grasp the concept of these formulas, but to be able to understand and interpret and take proactive actions based on the results of what these formulas have presented to you. And if you're going to take the exam, it's really important for you to be able to not only interpret, understand, and take proactive actions, but to help you through the exam, you might want to consider memorizing these formulas and writing them down prior to taking the exam. It's also extremely important for you to know the definitions of earned value, variance, indexing, forecasting, and to complete performance indexing. Again, it's one thing to be able to exercise the formula, but it's extremely important for you to be able to interpret the answer. Both are going to be extremely important, not only for the exam, but for you as a project manager to utilize these concepts in your career.